Hello and welcome to another one from my Silent Thrill blog. This one I would advise watching with a bit of caution. I've put it in the background because it's actually what I'm talking about, but if you find these things disturbing but you're curious at the same time, you could probably minimise the window and just listen. So this is about effectively what I called a real reanimator. So forget Lovecraft and his stories. This one is actually about the medical procedure that was undertaken. So this is a piece of vintage footage and quite gruesome in nature for some, but it's quite bizarrely interesting. So I'm really bad at pronunciation, so I'm just going to say that this was a gentleman called Sergey, and he was a Soviet scientist during the Stalin era. His research was vital to the development of open heart procedures in Russia. So he is primarily remembered for a machine called the autojector. It was a primitive heart and lung machine, and the device was used with various results on canines, and can be seen in this video. He was posthumously awarded the Lenin Prize. The video is in the public domain, as such why I have loaded it, otherwise I really probably wouldn't have done, and can be downloaded as part of the Prelinger archives. The version I watched was an English dub one. So people question whether it's real or not, and whether it's just Soviet Russian propaganda, but he did patent this. It was part of sort of thoracic surgeons' investigations, so you can actually get this online. The development for the first heart-lung machine for total body perfusion. He has constructed one of the earliest heart-lung machines, was the first to experiment on a total body perfusion with the heart of an animal isolated for the circulation. His work paved the way to the first experimental operations on heart valves. But they didn't get the pioneering contributions they deserved. But it does represent a landmark in cardiac surgery. So this was patented in 1926 from what I can recall. He worked with other scientists. It wasn't completely his work, but it's his patent, and he is the lead scientist on this, so he gets the credit. Now, it's as you can see, all nice, lovely black and white from the era, and yeah, it's different. The reason I think it causes a lot of controversy is more to do with the fact that the dogs are involved. So, to put this in perspective for ethics, you can look at what you're doing. We can see here now, there's no living body as such involved in it, no living organs. However, they are experimenting with lungs and how they expand and contract. It might also be worth noting that things like tuberculosis and that would cause extreme concern before the invention of the drugs that went with them, because they were effectively diseases that were killing lungs, and thoracic surgery was pretty much a brutal thing before the invention of these drugs. So you were looking at collapsing a lung and then taking the risk of trying to reinflate that side to see if it worked. It could leave your patients disfigured because that chest cavity would collapse, so they would walk funny, and you know, there really wasn't such a thing as, I would say, full recovery. So this is just part of that. There are so many other things, but he tried to work on things like deep hypothermia, and his autojector device was something that would be of interest because the dogs were then cooled down to something like 3 degrees C, resulting in this hypothermic cardiac arrest. So after rewarming, the restoration of normal cardiac function would happen and the dog's survival was achieved. So he went for an application for this device. The device he actually tried to patent in 1928 was a device for artificial circulation, and that was tried to be patented in Russia in November 29th, 1928. So yeah, this guy really, despite the fact that it seems quite brutal, was really just acting in the interest of science and trying to work out what they could do. Animals were better to use at the time. Let's go through the ethics. It's going to be far easier to get hold of a dog. It's also going to be slightly less controversial to experiment on the dog than it is to experiment on the human, and you're probably not going to get into quite so much trouble for it. And let's remember, we are going back a fair way here. So what we know as well is when he was doing some of his later work, the dogs would generally recover without any evidence of residual neurological damage. So they were bringing the dogs down to cardiac arrest and then finding a way to reinvent a way to bring them back again. So they were doing pretty well. Terebinsky and the other guy I can't pronounce very well, Sergey, I think it's Bryukhonenko, I'm sure someone's going to correct me, but World War II interrupted their work. After all, you know, World War II is going to pretty much interrupt most work, I would think. So yeah, as you can see, this is a bit of a bizarre video, and I think the thing that kind of puts you off the most with all of the different things that they keep doing is actually the fact that it's a dog's head in these ones that we're looking at. So this isn't actually live animals, these are dead animals that they're trying to reanimate. Now, if you know much about Lovecraft or you're quite interested in what he does, Herbert West Reanimator is actually one of the stories that I was talking about, and it's curious because they're trying to reanimate corpses, and so it kind of links into this idea that these kind of Frankenstein things where Mary Shelley describes that Dr. Frankenstein is bringing his monster to life by various methods, electricity being one of them. So yes, this video, not the nicest to watch in terms of actual visual work, but it's worth noting, I suppose, that actually it's really more about the vintage side of this. So whether it's real or not, I'm going to leave that for the arguments, but from what I can see, I think given that he's a well-known scientist, he has got patents, it's not entirely out of plausibility that they do exist for propaganda as well as scientific advancements. So it's proof that they're actually doing something. So if we take it from today's perspective, I suppose it's horrific because the animal's involved, but if we actually look back at the fact that these were done in sort of 20s to 40s era, to be honest, it's difficult because personally I love my animals. We have a rescue animal, but I also understand that if you can't get human subjects to test on, then to many people the idea of using an animal is a better one. So I'm going to leave you with this piece of footage. I'm not going to leave it running much longer. I hope you enjoyed the overview. I'm sorry if I've not really been brilliantly scientific about it. I'll be honest, it's not an area I have great expertise in, but if you enjoy it, if you have any comments, please tell me, and if you think that there's more to add to it, then by all means please do comment and let me know more. Thank you.